I did stop it, but then
Okay,
now I
so
have to like
start
redo it.
redo it
Let me
again.
delete it. It's okay. You can like, okay, whatever. I'm doing the editing anyways. Hey, my name is Justin. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Bunny, but my Vietnamese name is Mimin.
Min. Nice to meet you. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the Vietnam War and like your family's experience in not only being in the Vietnam War and learning the Vietnam War. Anyways, this is useless. So, did you go to middle school or high school in Vietnam?
Yes, I did. But I actually went to an American international school, so it's a bit different from the public Vietnamese school.
So, tell us how is it different then?
For the international school over there, they don't really teach much about the Vietnamese culture, or Vietnamese subjects such as math or literature, history, or like physics are related to like the Vietnamese way of teaching. But other than that, I think it's also influenced a lot by the American way of teaching, like the school system. Yeah, and the grading system is different.
So, being in an international school, did you guys also learn about the Vietnam War in your history classes?
Yeah, we did, but it's like really brief, just a little bit. Yeah, it's not much.
Do you think it's more from like the Western perspective or like from the Vietnamese perspective, or do you think it's more like in the middle, like in between? Or
Well, we had like a history, like a Vietnamese history class, but it's not as it's very general. So, but we also learned in like a Vietnamese perspective towards the war, but everything is very general. You don't have a lot of information about it. Yeah.
so for like all you know about the Vietnam War, do you know more of them from your family, or do you know more about the Vietnam War from learning from like teachers or like textbooks?
I learned more about Vietnam War from my family because they actually were in the war, so they told me a lot of stories about it. But I don't really learn a lot about the Vietnam War in textbooks or from my professors or from school. That's just me personally.
Okay. Well, that has to do with you being in international school, I guess. But so did what what kind of experiences did your like maybe your elders or like maybe your mom, your dad told you about the Vietnam War, and like what were your reactions toward it? Like how do you
Okay.
feel about them?
So my mother and my grandparents were actually in the war. So my grandparents, my grandmother, she was like a stay-home housewife, but she's like supporting my grandfather when he was like a soldier on the field. He was like one of the people who helped the one of the was it general to write down all the important information for the Vietnam side. And then for my mother, she was like an on location I don't know what it's called, on location soldier. So she's like holding guns and everything, and you know.
How do you feel when you see that maybe like your grandfather, grandmother, now that they're old, but that they had to go through like something like a war that's like that you feel is really far from you, and like something you feel that's like something you will never experience? Like what are your like how do you react to that, and like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm very lucky that I don't have to experience war, but like my parents say that it's really intense. They said that it's really it's something that you don't want to go through. And then my grandfather and grandmother, they told me that war is something that is like it's just like destroy you emotionally and physically. So I'm really lucky that I don't have to go through that. But it's kind of like great to have people who tell you stories about it, so you know what happened in the past, so you don't repeat it in the future.
So you said your grandparents tell me about how it destroys you emotionally and physically. So, did they tell you like any story or like any anecdote that really shows like how cruel war can be, or like something that really stood out to your grandparents and also left an impression on you?
So I heard one story from my mom. She told me that there's one time when she was on location with her guns and everything, and then they were kind of like telling people in groups to go hide in one of the locations where they set it up for people to hide in. So there were two, and then there were two groups, and then one group they went to the A location, and the other one went to the B location. So my mother was really little, and then she tried to go to the A location because she heard that it's safer. But when she reaches the A location, they said, "Oh, there's no more room for her." So she has to run to the other location, and the airplanes were everywhere, like up there, and they were like bombings, everything. And then when my mother finally get to the B location for to hide for safety, she heard like a boom, and then when they finally like get up and then get out of the hiding location, the location A is totally bombed. It's like everybody in there just is gone. Like you don't even see bodies. Everything is just gone. So it was like a pretty amazing story for my mother because it was full, so my mother didn't go there. But if she went there, she could have like died.
That's very interesting. How how close to death you can be.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, and there's another story
uh huh.
that when she was like little, she whenever she should go towards like a different village, there would be like hundreds and hundreds of dead bodies on the side of the sidewalk. And she would like, because she was little, she didn't know, so like she would like go and just look at it. There's like blood everywhere, people, like a bunch of bodies like stacked on each other. And my grandmother would always have to like go out and drag my mother in because she doesn't want my mom to get sick from those bodies. That it means that like there was like so many dead people that they don't even have time to like bury them. So it's really horrible, like just when you hear it, it's just horrible. So imagine like
Yeah,
actually seeing it.
that's crazy. So, do you think that either your parents or your grandparents, like being under such stress under the war, or like maybe being traumatized in some way, like do you think it has changed them at all in any way, either in a good way or a bad way, like their emotions or like how they treat stuff?
Well, luckily, I didn't lose anybody. I mean, I didn't lose any family members from my family for the war. But my mother says that because of the war, so all of the family members of mine like became stronger in a way. Like they know how to protect their family, and then I think, well, it's a good thing for that aspect, but I don't think being in the war is a great experience. Whenever you think of it, it's not a good experience to think about. Like I told my mom, like, oh mom, how is it like to be in a war? And she's like, you don't want to even think about it because it's so horrible. Like you can die like anytime. Like when you're on location, you see and they're like fighting each other. You see like guns and bullets on the field. It's just like it's kind of like it's beautiful in a way because there's just so many bullets going across each other. It's just so crazy.
That's really that's wow. But
I have a question.
okay.
Is there any specific reasons that your family sent you to the international school instead of public school?
Thing is like, well, it's more like a social class thing because in Vietnam the gap between the poor and the rich is a little bit wide. So like if you send your kid to like a public school, then they will get affiliated to with like a lot of different social class, and you might not want that. So my mother sent me to an international school. First is to improve my English. Second is for me to adapt with like the same social class people. Well, it's a nice thing because it's kind of an advantage for you to like go and then have connections with the people that at the same level as you. But it's a kind of a bad thing in a way because you kind of losing your roots, so you don't really know a lot about like your country, or like you don't really have a lot of connections to like the um people, like your people, because in my school you're not allowed to speak Vietnamese. If you get caught speaking Vietnamese 3 times, you get expelled. So it's really intense.
Okay.
That's
So is your whole family right in
yeah. I was
in
gonna ask
America?
that. So like right now, is more your family in America or in Vietnam?
Yeah, most of them are in America. Only my father's in Vietnam. But it's like a personal thing, so
Okay.
that's why, yeah.
So I was just wondering, is there any like just this the experience that related to Vietnam War somehow make your family decided to move to America to have a better life, or you just get rid
Um,
of the past experiences?
well,
Yeah.
for my family, it's kind of the opposite because we have a better, uh, like, we were more privileged in Vietnam because we were the people who stand towards the Vietnamese people during the war. So after the war, because we won, so like after the war, we get privileged by the government. So over there it's better for us, but because my mother loved the weather here, so
Oh.
yeah, so she came here. Yeah.
So that even if you guys did stay in Vietnam, you would still be okay because you were on the winning side and you guys still get
Yeah,
privileges and stuff.
yeah. But I know a lot of stories that people who are here, who immigrated here, they well, they don't like Vietnam and like at all. Because whenever you mention Vietnam or do you want to go back to Vietnam, they would say no, because the war because they during the war they supported the Americans. So that's why like when we won the war. Um, that like the government took everything away from them. All the privilege they got when they were supporting the American. So, well, it's not like there's no bad and good during wars. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So everything got taken away from them, and then that's why like they went to America, and yeah, so that's why like they don't like Vietnam because everything that they got was taken away from them, and all that privilege was going to the winning side. So it's our families, so
Yeah.
That would be good.
So I was just wondering after you came to America, like because it's a different environment, there's like different people who actually might not know so much about Vietnam. Because even though if when you were in international school, everyone lived in that environment, they knew what it was like. So and they must have heard a lot of stories about war themselves. I mean, a lot of people there been through it. But my question is, after you came to America, like, did anyone like talk to you, like, ask about the Vietnam War, or did they have like their own opinion about it? And were you like, either you thought they were very um, like uninformative or like uneducated, or you think that they just don't know so much, or do you think they have a good idea about it? Like, what's your thing? What do you think?
usually like when I say I'm Vietnamese, people just well, there's two things that people talk to me about. One is do you speak French? Because
Right.
yeah, do you speak French? I'm like, no. And then like, okay, so do you know what about the Vietnam War? I'm like, okay, yeah, like my family was in it, but I was not in it because I'm 20, So they're like, oh yeah, yeah, and they start talking about the Vietnam War. But the interesting thing is, for different people, they have different opinions about a war and a different experience about a war. So like some people, when they heard that I'm Vietnamese, they're just like, oh, okay, So it's like, I don't know, the bad memory for them, like, something that's affiliated with the war and Vietnam. So there's a connection and I don't like it. But some people are like, oh, we're sorry we came. Like their attitude is kind of like, oh, we're sorry, like we came to your country and this and that. Some people are like, oh, it was like we're trying to help you, so we came there, but it didn't work out, so we just leave. So there's just like different stories about the war, and I'm just, I mean, it's interesting to hear about that because there's no true story, you know, because you don't really know what's true and what's not. So like, yeah, I hear a lot about it, like a lot. I think they know more about the war than I do, even when they're not Vietnamese.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's how it is for me. First is, do you speak French? Do you know about the war? That's the two things I
Yeah.
talk to me about when I say I'm Vietnamese.
Well, what about like your family when they came to America? Like, um, what? How do I phrase this? So like, do they feel like their values or like what they think about the war specifically? Because we want to know about the war, not just the clash of cultures. So like, do do they see a difference between like how they approach the war and like maybe how Americans approach the war or like how their friends approach the war over here?
So like the way they think about it, what you mean?
Like
Or-
kind of like the way they think it, like I'm pretty sure the facts, like maybe the facts too, like maybe we have different facts or like maybe we have different thoughts on the war, different takes on the war. Like maybe Americans would be like, oh, we didn't lose the war, we just kind of like didn't want to participate in it anymore or like something like that. So like what do they think about like your family? Like do you know what
So
they think
for
about?
my mother, she thinks that well, it's war, right? So well, one country want to take over the other. So for my mother, it's like, you know, she doesn't support war, so she just like go try to protect her country, you know. But when well, because when I study about the Vietnam War in the American school, is well, it's very brief, but it's kind of different because I didn't really go over what happened. You know, like they just like, oh, you know, like the Americans come to Vietnam, and you know, after 1975 they leave, and I'm like, so what happened there? You know, something happened. But like I feel like for my mother, the way my mother approached it, like the way she sees it, is different because she says that, well, um, like it's more like she sees it that as the Americans trying to take away from trying to take away something from Vietnam, you know, and that's most how like most Vietnamese people see it too, you know, because like another country coming to your country and then just like invade it, you know. But then like for the American side, or like my American friends, the way they see it is just like they try to help Vietnam, like they try to come to Vietnam and help them because the Vietnam is like an undeveloped country, so they try to help it, but we rejected, so they left. So that's how the difference is, like from what I heard is like that. But I don't know, it's different, you know.
Did your family, like including your mom or like maybe your grandparents, I don't know, like have any like feeling like any sort of like dislike or like any sort of like uncomfortableness, like knowing that other people think like that, or like do they have any like reactions towards?
No. My family is it's a mellow family, so they're really open minded. So the way they see the war, it's just, even though like well, war, they see it's like war is something that you don't want. You know, it just happen when it happens, you have to go with it. You know, so like what my family sees is as like I don't know, it's uh, like you have to go with the flow, and that's it. You know, it's not like something you can like plan. You know, you have to go with the flow, and then so like you have to go with the flow, and like you kind of have to protect yourself, and that's it. But she doesn't really have any negative negative
Negativity?
negativity
Negativity? Okay.
negativity towards like of that like opinions and everything, because people have different opinions, you know. So like
So now let's backtrack to like when your parents were like your family was in Vietnam. So like I don't know if your mom has ever told you this, but so did they have a different impression on America and like Americans like back then compared to now? Like is there a difference between how they perceive?
yeah, like when I was like little, they're thinking of Americans are still kind of closed-minded. Like because that's how they saw the Americans when they were in Vietnam during the war, right? So like they're like, oh, the Americans are, well, they're strong and they're just trying to take our country away. It's kind of like that. But now the way to see Americans are different. They're like, oh, they're just people, just friendly people.
Yeah, and Paul Newman was like that too.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason why my mother decided to immigrate to America, because she thinks that the people here, uh, their lifestyle is it kind of matches my family's style.
That's great. Um,
Memoir.
what? Memoir?
Yeah.
Of what?
他有没有新 memoir？
他没有什么？Huh? Memory? What? I don't know what she's saying.
I'm an essay. I'm doing an interview right now.
Memoir.
Okay. Do you want to come?
Memorial.
Memoir.
I don't know. Like four?
Memorial. 再读一次。
memoir 不是东西吗？memorial 才是。
Memoir 是写的，
哦，OK OK。
而且是写。
什么？
没事。 他
Okay,
一
let me
直
do the interview first.
指
Do
略
you
跟我
wanna
读
come
memoir
next time?
memoir memoir。
Memorial
对啊，memoir 个屁 memoir。
我觉得你好逼逼，你问了好多
OK
就是很 repetitive 的问题。
但是就是这样能
Okay.
让他说
Wait,
对。
when is
反
your
正很
class?
剪的时候自己
本来就是要逼逼。
本来不需要，就
Okay.
讲说
Oh,
不要
so
太
so we're not eating.
对啊，剪掉时候没有我声音。我逼逼是为了让他更好逼逼。你仔细
Well,
听
depends on you.
interview，
We
那些
have to do
interviewer
interview
都是这样
now,
的，
so
就是在瞎逼逼。那些主持人呢，
你问他那个 re-education 看，
他是赢的那一边。
那不是你问下录死了。
也有人
啊，
是
行，我待会儿问，我还没问到呢。
Sorry about that.
It's okay. But, that's 20 minutes, okay. So she wanted to ask so we actually wanted to ask, so have you ever been to like a war memorial either in Vietnam or like the United States or maybe like a cemetery or like anything like that?
I've been to the museum where they have like airplanes from the war, and I've been to the cemetery for the soldiers who were in the Vietnam War, and that's pretty much it.
How did you feel about that?
Oh well, when I was in the museum, it feels kind of strange because it's kind of like you're seeing these things that were actually in the war, and then you were like, wow, like so these are like the actual things that were there, and then you just feel like it must have been like really intense, because you saw like helicopters, like parts of like like the bombs and everything. It's really crazy. And then when I went to the cemetery, it was like sad in a way, and then but in a way I feel very grateful to the people who like sacrificed their life to protect ours. So yeah.
So were those both in Vietnam?
Yeah.
And were they built by the Vietnam government? Or
I
like
don't really
maybe
know.
American government? I don't know because.
I'm not sure, but I believe it was built by the Vietnamese people.
So everything under also like, cause you talked about like the military stuff. So those things they showcase, were there like American weapons or like Vietnamese weapons, or like maybe stuff from both sides of the war?
Yeah, it's stuff on both sides. So there's some stuff from the Vietnamese people, some stuff from the American people. So in the museum, there's like everything that they could have collected in the war.
Mm.
Have you ever heard about the word re-education or re-education camp?
I think I kind of heard about it, but I don't really know
Do you
much
mean-
about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know anyone or some relatives of your family ever been drafted to fight in a war? Like,
Her dad fought for the war, right?
My mother and my
your-
grandfather.
Your mother was like, and your
Yeah.
grandfather was like the writing guy,
Yeah,
right?
writing
Yeah.
commission,
So she
yeah.
talked about that.
so they were voluntarily
Yeah,
involved in
yeah,
to just protect.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think it's half and half. It's kind of required for the people to go.
So
Yeah.
like, does the government require you to do it, or like maybe like there's a certain like
Yeah.
member in that family or like something like that? I
No,
don't
it's
know.
required for you to go.
So every single person.
Yeah. So like all the, like if you're over 18, I think, yeah, you have to go.
Okay.
So like when my mother was like 23 or something, and she's in there.
What did your grandmom do?
Oh, she's just like a stay-home housewife, but she does that because she wants to take care of her kids because they all go out to the war, and also my grandfather is also in the war, so she wants to be like at home and like supporting them from home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think we could talk about. We could start here. Like, is there any other stories from the war like that you find memorable? Or, like,
Well, it's not directly about my family, but since like I work in Vietnam, I work kind of close to the entertainment industry, and then most of the time they talk. We go to charities, so most of the time we come across like people or like families that were affected by the war, and it was like orange disease or something. It's like affect you. It comes from the bombs of the Americans, and then they were affected. It's affected through generations, and then it just like it makes them to suffer from Down syndrome and all that. Yeah, so a lot of people are still suffering from that, and they're getting like they're getting support from the government, but still, you know, it's a physical thing. Even when you get support from the government, it's just money, you know, but they're like physically are like, you know, suffering from those diseases. So it's really sad.
do you think the government still criticizes America for the war, or like do they have a different stance on the war now?
No, I think Vietnam right now they have a good relationship with the Americans, and different countries too. But with America, with the U.S. alone, like they have a really good relationship, and it's been like, you know, improving a lot.
Do you know how like, cause you were in international school, but do you know like how the government maybe um decided to, because the government has control of the media and everything, so how do they portray the war to their citizens, or like how does the government talk about the war to their citizens now?
Oh, you mean the Vietnamese
The
government?
Vietnamese government, yeah.
Okay, I think like the history in, well, because like I mentioned before, I went to the international school, so it's different. But I have some friends who are from public school. The history doesn't change. Like what they learn in the history about the Vietnam War, it doesn't change. But like even right now, it doesn't change. But they don't make it like such a big deal. It's just they want the students to know this is what happened, and you know, so like all the Vietnamese people right now don't have any like um like hate or anything like that like towards the American people. It's just something that happened in the history, and then that's how the Vietnamese government teach them. Um, is yeah, they just try to make it like a factual thing rather than something that, oh, this is what they've done to us, we have to revenge. No, it's not something like that. It's just like this is what happened, and we must learn from what happened and not to repeat it again.
Well, you talked about not having hate. I just thought about it. Your grandparents being having fun in the war and being like adults at the time. Do they have they had any hatred towards America, and like do they feel better about it now? Or, like do they still have like a little, at least a little bit, like maybe like dislike
Oh.
towards America?
Well, my grandparents like unfortunately passed away. But when I got a chance to like talk to them about that, it's like they didn't mention anything about hate. They mentioned about like what happened more, you know. So they're like, oh, this is what happened, this that happened, and you know, we were all scared. Everyone was scared, and then like you know, it's they didn't really mention anything about hate. But I know a lot of people, like I mentioned before, like I know a lot of people like who are here now, and then like they don't like the Vietnamese. Yeah, that's what I know. that's the only like kind of hate that I know in this story. But other than that, like I didn't hear my mother or my grandparents talk anything about hate.
That's actually your family sounds like a bunch of nice people, by the way.
Thank you.
Media?
Sure. Well, I kind of asked something like this, but let's do it from a different side because we talked about how the Vietnamese like portray the war, right?
Mhm.
So after you came to America, like, were you ever exposed to any sort of like different media talking about the Vietnam War, like maybe in the entertainment industry, like maybe movies, musicals, or maybe like news or like television, all that kind of stuff? Like, did any of the American portrayal of the Vietnam War like differ from like what you feel about it, or like match with what you think, or does it show like a different value or anything like that? Just elaborate on that.
I don't remember, but I saw this in one of the 201 cinema history class. And well, most of the time when I see movies or anything that has like kind of mentioning of the Vietnam War, they just say Vietnam War. Oh, after the Vietnam War, this is what happened. But it's like they use Vietnam War as like a time period, like time mark in history, instead of like portraying it. But I think there's one movie that I watched in the class 201 cinema history that I forgot the name, but it was like a scene between two American people, and they try to make money out of like the like they try to make money, so they try to create a scene like a play, you know, and then the play they were playing is like the American people and the Vietnamese people. Like there's a Vietnamese person and an American person. So like the American people who portray the Vietnamese person, it was like over exaggerated, and for some reason I feel kind of offended by that, but not like too much, you know. It's just like because they were like speaking in like, you know, they weren't speaking in like Vietnamese. They were like then they were like making really high pitch noises, and like they were like dressed in like costumes that look ridiculous, and like that's the only movie that I found that really kind of offended the Vietnamese culture, because that's not how we look like or how we sound like. And then like the way the person like run in that film and like how the actions for that film is like I don't know. It just makes like Vietnamese people is like some people who are like afraid, or like some people who are always scared and like just run around. But that's not what happened. Like because we won the war, right? So we did something right, you know. And then yeah, it's just that's the only movie that I found kind of offensive.
Was that movie? Is that more of a recent movie, or like was it?
No,
from
it's a
before?
long time ago. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's in black and white, and then I forgot the name, but I mean I can find out about it now.
It's
but
okay. Like
yeah.
it's okay. It's just a question.
It's 33 minutes.
How much do we need?
Like 10 after dating. Like 10, 15.
After
I think,
cutting.
10 to 15 minutes?
yeah, I think we're ready
That's-
with enough stuff.
I think that's good.
Good. Got enough.
Yeah. So do you have any
Let's see,
other things?
is there anything else you want to talk about? Like, do you
No.
know?
Do you have anything that you want to talk to our professor? He's from Vietnam too. Like you can just say hi.
Hi, I was gonna take your class, but maybe next semester. This semester I'm kind of there's a lot of things going on, so I'm not ready to study about my roots yet. So maybe next semester.
Thank you,
That's
thank
awesome.
you,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Do you mind if we take a picture together?
Yeah. Bye.